Hello once again. I'm talking about a new show from Disney called The Ghost and Molly McGee. It skews younger for sure. I recently talked about Amphibia, which seems like it could have its target audience a little bit older, like early teens. This one's rated Y7. It's definitely aimed at a very young audience, and right off the bat, no, it doesn't feel like adult-friendly animation to me. It mostly feels like a show for kids, which is just fine. It's a kid show, and general impressions, it's just fun. It's just a fun kid show. And it's funny because I just did my video on Amphibia, and one of the things that I was talking about in there is that, at least in my experience, a lot of Disney television animation tends to feel very sanitized, very samey, like there are harsh limits on the creativity that you're allowed to apply to the show. But this one, yeah, it still does feel kind of sanitized. It still does feel like a lot of other Disney television shows. But at least in terms of the visuals, the animation itself, and just kind of the overall energy, it does come off as very creative. Especially in the early episodes, you have some really fun, slightly grotesque animations for Scratch, which is the name of the ghost here, and some fun transitions, some very creative visual work going on here, which I really appreciate, especially because I've been watching so much stuff lately that just doesn't have that element. Overall, yeah, like I said, the energy, it's a very high energy show. It's not necessarily new in any of its individual elements. The main character is one of those aggressively positive, helpful characters. Leslie Knope, I was reminded of Leslie Knope quite a lot in this show, and even just Parks and Recreation in general. It takes place in a very small town called Brighton, which is maybe somewhere in the Midwest in the show. I actually lived in a town called Brighton for a while in Massachusetts, but I don't think they're referring to that one specifically, and I assume it's kind of a joke because they say it's a miserable place to live, and Brighton comes from Bright Town, of course. The town slogan is a place to settle, which is very funny. Voice acting, fine. Voice acting is okay. Yeah, the main character, I think it's Ashley Birch, sounds like an adult woman and not a child, whereas a lot of the other children sound like children, so that's a little bit, but she still does a very good job, especially since there are a lot of songs here, a lot of singing. In fact, I've seen the show classified as a musical show, which is interesting because I don't know if I would define it that way necessarily, but there are a lot of songs, and in fact, this is getting to be a thing. I forget what other show I saw this in recently, but apparently it's a trickle-down thing from Bob's Burgers, where in Bob's, of course, they'll have the super specific songs relevant to the events of the episode. So let's say the characters are going on a road trip to get some kind of special ice cream. There will be a song specifically about going on a road trip to get a special ice cream. Things like that. This show does that almost every episode, and it's usually pretty fun. I mean, the music in general is actually really solid. The theme song I like quite a bit. In terms of score music, no, not that memorable outside of those sort of song moments, and it does do the Mickey Mousing thing, which, yep, very common in television animation for children, but especially common in Disney television animation. I don't know why. Maybe they feel like it contributes to a certain tone. I'm not a big fan of it, and I'm not a big fan of it here. The other major lead voice actor is Dana Snyder, who plays Scratch, who's the ghost of the Ghost and Molly McGee. You'll recognize the voice right away if you're familiar with some of the really old Adult Swim stuff. Specifically, he's part of the main cast of Aqua Team Hunger Force for the whole run, I think. And what was it, Squidbillies? I don't like either of those shows at all, so it kind of had some negative associations for me, but it seems to be doing a good job here regardless. If you can kind of get past those associations, then it's just fine. It's the Disney thing in general, or even just contemporary voice acting where you just hire someone because they have a very distinct voice, and then sort of acting ability is secondary. But here, no, it's fine. He does a good job. It's okay. What else? You have a kind of perfect family in terms of the relationships with each other. There's minor conflict with each other. They don't have a lot of money, so that's sort of a source of conflict, and also a potential source of bonding. And it's also, I think, more relatable, certainly for me. I guess the family is Thai, except for the dad, who just seems very white and maybe Irish or something. So I don't know if that's a thing. It's kind of a funny coincidence because also in Amphibia, the lead character is Thai or Thai American. So compared to a lot of stuff I've seen recently, it's definitely above average show for me. Like I said, the visuals, the animation, specifically character animation, are probably my favorite aspects of the show overall. It does have a decent sense of humor. The storylines themselves are nothing nothing special. It's really standard stuff that you've probably seen handled many times before. The characters can be genuinely funny. There's a decent variety of characters here when you include all the sort of other kids at the school or other people in town. It's also ultimately, well, I haven't finished season 1, so that's one thing, is this was more an impressions than a full review, but it does seem to be leaning towards like a restoration narrative where you have this town that's kind of in the dumps and people aren't very happy with everything, and then slowly over time they improve it. Heavy sense of encouraging community, volunteering, doing your part in general, whether it's on the micro scale of for your immediate family or for the neighborhood or the entire city that you live in. I'm on board with that. I mean, obviously it's a squeaky clean Disney kind of message, but I do think it's relevant. I have no problems with communicating that here. I think it can potentially even do some good. Just the idea of being involved and trying to bring about the present or the future that you want to see wherever you happen to live. Some clear influence from some early 2000s animation stuff, Billy and Mandy in particular, certainly, or Fairly Odd Parents, where you have, the supernatural sort of side character who's sort of supposed to be intimidating or powerful but actually isn't, becomes just a source of comedy and kind of gets mocked a lot of the time. But still, that character has special powers that can be used for plot convenience or as sources of comedy. Scratch here can possess humans, which, although it's an uncomfortable plot device in contemporary storytelling, I think, we do get some good humor out of it. Ruby Gloom I was reminded of as well. Not too much else to say. My impressions are generally very positive. I'm not on the floor laughing all the time. It is mostly for kids. I'm not blown away by the animation, but it does seem like there's more creativity and effort here than we tend to see. I have no idea who's involved with the show behind the scenes, but it seems like the team is doing a very good job. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Ghost of Molly McGee. And so far, it hasn't gone into the thing where it leans into a continuous narrative with a bunch of lore and like a very large plot that spans multiple seasons. We'll see. Maybe it goes there towards the end of the first season, maybe not. I'm kind of hoping it doesn't because I don't think it needs to, really, at all. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with it. I've been having fun. Not something that I'll go back and rewatch all the time, but yeah, pleasant, fun, neat ideas, and pretty darn good execution. I think that's about everything. Thanks for stopping by.